Fan of Alan Wake? Want to turn yourself into a Taken? Let me show you how I achieved this look. First, you're going to have to record some footage for rotoscoping. Pick an outfit that gives you the kind of silhouette you want and stand against a high contrast background. I just recorded a few seconds of idle movement, shifting my weight from one foot to another, getting interrupted by my dog a couple times, and then I took those clips and I imported them into After Effects. Double-click your video layer and then use the roto brush to mask out your silhouette. It's okay if it's a little weird on the edges, because we're going to be blurring it anyway. Once you're done, go to the Effects panel and select Fill and drag it onto your layer. Fill your silhouette with a really dark color like a really dark green or dark blue. Then add a Gaussian blur to soften the edges. I do something between the 45 to 55 range. Now we're going to give this guy a wave warp. I'm going to use the Animation Composer plugin. You don't need it for this, but that's what I'm going to use. I lessened the intensity of this overall, but I do a couple keyframes where I bring it up and then bring it down, especially when he's moving. I'll increase the wave warp intensity. Now we're going to create a new composition, drag in this edited comp, and duplicate the layer. One layer will be our base shadow and the other will be our wispy layer. On our base taken layer, we will add the directional blur effect to soften our edges even more. The direction is set to 0 and the blur length max is around 55. I increase the blur when he moves and decrease it when he's still. On our wispy layer, I add directional blur again. The direction is set to 0, the blur length is around 230. I keep it at 230 the entire duration, and I lower the opacity of this layer to around 60. Okay, now we're going to create another new composition. Drag in the composition you just finished. This new composition is going to be our final product. It's made of 3 components: our base, duplicated 3 times, one is normal, one is for some added wispiness, and the final duplicated layer is for that sort of gasoline on water look that the Taken have when they move around. Starting with our base normal layer, change the mode to color burn, and change the opacity to around 80%. And that's all you have to do for that one. Now you'll take our first duplicated layer and make it color burn as well. Change the opacity of this one to around 90. Something that I forgot to do initially was to create a background for this. It's going to be much more useful if you create a background. Just make a new shape layer or a solid and make it a dark gray or a dark color. Something that looks like the dark place. You can put an image here later on if you want, but for right now, just a dark layer is fine. Okay, for our third duplicated layer, this is our gasoline on water layer, drag this layer underneath the rest of them. Change the mode to screen. Now create a new adjustment layer and track matte it to our third duplicated layer. You might be thinking, why are you making an adjustment layer when you could just put the effects on the screen layer? The difference is very minimal. I just like the way this looks more. The colors are just slightly different and the impact around the edges is slightly different. It's completely optional for you though if you don't like the little extra oomph it gives. Go back to the effects panel and add vibrance. And make the vibrance around 86 and saturation 54. And it makes a fun, bright color that's sort of ghostly around our Taken. So the cool thing that I like about the way that the Taken move is that they have a sort of delay as they walk, like they have a base and then they have sort of a ghostly, shadowy sort of look as they move. So that's what we're going to try and do here. How I get that sort of look is super simple. I just offset our duplicated layers by a couple frames. You can adjust as you want. It's really however you feel and are happy with. You could stop here and call it done and it would look awesome. But if you want to add that sort of stutter movement when they walk really quickly, I can show you how to do that here. We're going to go to our base composition. So not the video file itself, but the composition where we first created our base and our wisp. You're going to right click the base layer and go to enable time remapping. And then you're going to keyframe the beginning of your biggest movement and the end of your biggest movement. Then you're going to highlight the end of your biggest movement and the final frame. You take those 2 keyframes and you squish them in to cut down the time of the biggest movement. So for me, I'm walking from left to right. I'm squishing that movement down so I'm walking really fast. Then you're going to highlight all of your time remapping keyframes, copy them, and paste them onto your wisp layer. So both of your layers, your base and your wisp inside this composition, have identical time remapping keyframes. And then when you go back to your final composition, it should all reflect there. You might need to adjust the way that you moved your layers to create that offset so it looks a little better, but it shouldn't take too much moving. And that's how I turned myself into a Taken. Now I'm off to go haunt the dark place, as is my will. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that it was useful for you. If you like these sorts of videos, please subscribe. And if you want some behind the scenes or you want to see this stuff a little bit earlier, consider joining my Patreon. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!